42nd day, Cassie Ventura returned to the stand in the federal trial of Sean Diddy Combs, and man, it was just as shocking and devastating as it was on yesterday. Legal analyst Candace Kelley joins us right now with the breakdown.
Like you said, it was a lot. What we found out actually were more details, kind of just the hundreds of encounters of these freakoffs. Cassie really broke down everything. What she also said was that at one point, Sean Combs did say that he wanted to blow up Kid Cudi's car, wanted to make sure that all of his friends were there. And she also mentioned that many, many times she said that she did not want to do this anymore. Remember, that's very important to the case that the prosecution is trying to prove. But here's what was the really big bombshell, and this came at the end of the day. Cassie explained that when she finally broke up with Sean, she decided that she would have dinner with him. She said it was a fine dinner, a lovely dinner. But when they got back home, he raped her. I mean, and this was at the end of the day. So this was really, really big news on top of such big news that, this is why they asked jurors on questionnaires, are you comfortable with very detailed explanations about what goes on when people are in the middle of sex? She talked about how when Sean Combs found out that she was dating Kid Cudi, that he started beating her as she was having sex during one of these freak-offs. She talked about getting sores in her mouth because of having so much different types of oral sex with so many different people, and uterine tract infections that the medicines just wouldn't heal. I mean, it was just a day of details. And when asked how many freak-offs did she think she was a part of, she said too many to count. She eventually said hundreds. So just a lot went on today. And certainly a lot will go on tomorrow. That's when cross-examination will begin.
She also talked about her 29th birthday, that he was just calling her so much that he wanted to have a freak off, and she just left her friends at a karaoke bar.
She absolutely did. And this was more than on one occasion where she abandoned an event or abandoned friends at the karaoke bar. She abandoned a Prince concert when he heard that she was coming. He rushed right out of there. She said she fell in her heels because she knew that she was going to be in trouble. And that was what the crux of what she was saying, that, listen, I'm abandoning people. I'm scared. I'm scared of this man. I'm scared for my life. She mentioned that he had guns. She also had pictures that were shown to the jury. Now, these were her own pictures that she took over the years. Some of the pictures her mother took of bruises on the back of her body. Of course, the jury got to see that, but everybody else in the court gallery did not see that. In fact, we won't see any of that. This is part of the stipulation and decision that was made by the judge. But there were a lot of pictures, and I would say, again, a lot of details just kind of layering on that. This was something that she was doing every single week, 3 hours, 4 hours at a time, taking drugs. She mentioned the use of the IV drip in order to revive her when she was getting tired. She mentioned once waking up in the shower after having blacked out. So, I mean, today was a day of details. She mentioned more than 10 men by names that were brought in as escorts, really building the prosecution's case. I will say that if I was defending Sean Combs, I would have to dig into a couple of things that she brought up. Number one, she did initiate a couple of fights. She talked about initiating fights with Sean Combs. She talked about initiating a fight with someone who was taking a picture of her. She talked about texts that she sent to Sean Combs saying, I love you, you make me so happy. She talked about a lot of things that might seem confusing to jurors and that they're going to have to decipher whether or not, was she being real or not. Another big deal of the day was the fact that, yes, we all know that there was a settlement, but she told everybody in the courtroom that that settlement was $20 million. And I will say, if I was a defense attorney, I would be bringing that up, asking her why was she asking for that money? Why did it take her so long to ask for that money? Was it because she married someone that did not have as much money as Sean Combs? I would get on her about the fact that she did go on shopping sprees, that he paid for apartments and places where she lived. We really do have to look at both sides, because on cross, this is what we are going to see the defense break down.
I read one report where the defense told the judge they're going to be shifting their strategy as a result of her testimony.
Well, sure. They have to be very, very careful because she is a pregnant woman. She had very, very tight witness testimony, and they have to be careful to make sure that the empathy that she gets is not magnified so much by the jurors. They're going to have to be nice to her. This will not be a regular cross. You normally have a cross examination where you impeach the witness. You make sure that you want them to come off as liars to the jurors. That's going to be very, very difficult in this situation. Plus, what she's doing is she's giving up information before they can bring it up. For example, as I said, she said that she did start fights. Well, that's something that they can talk about. But the fact that she put everything out there, this is something that they're going to have to change. She was a likable witness, believable witness. Again, a few holes, but they definitely have to go a little more gingerly than they would on someone who was not 8 months pregnant.
Again, it was a lot today about domestic violence. And so do you believe that part of this strategy is that for the prosecution, that they want this jury to be repulsed by Sean Diddy Combs?
Oh, absolutely. I think that they want them to be repulsed. I think that they want them to know all of the details. I think they want them to be really sick to their stomachs, because when you hear this type of information where, a regular drug is not kind of curing something that a lot of women get, a UTI, that kind of puts a little hole in my stomach that she couldn't cure that because she was involved in this domestic violence situation. I listen, there are a lot of ways that this can happen too. I mentioned the expert that we're going to hear from that will kind of justify and contextualize all of this. I would also suggest that if anybody wants to look at, those people who are in violent situations, look at the Duluth model out of Minnesota. Of control and power. It talks about all of the ways that women and men are controlled, economically and physically, and made to feel like they're alienated from their friends. All of that plays into this. And I've worked with a lot of domestic violence survivors, so she seemed pretty typical, but we definitely need some contextualization as to what she was going through and what someone inside of that type of violent relationship is feeling, because she stayed for a very long time.
Questions from our panel. Rebecca, you first.
Well, thank you so much for your reporting. But as you talked about the testimony today that was centered around domestic abuse and domestic violence, we know that that isn't in the criminal complaint, but specifically it's around coercion and sex trafficking. How do you think the state is going, how do you think the prosecution is going to start to move over to the trafficking and the coercion to prove its case?
Well, and thank you for the question. There was one point in her testimony where she talked about getting on a commercial flight. And during that flight, she made reference to the fact that Sean Combs, right on the plane, pulled up video that she thought was deleted, just to make sure that she knew she had to continue in those freak-offs. And this was after she had said several times, I do not want to be a part of these freak-offs. So I think that many people might look at that as coercion. There's threat, there's intimidation, there's that level of coercion. So they're drawing and connecting the dots very slowly, because you're right. There isn't anything outright that says Sean Combs wrote a note that says, I will kill you if you do not go to these freak-offs. But the way that she was treated, how many times she was beaten and punched and kicked in her head, I think that the jury will be able to connect the dots and make that coercion part of it really stick.
Mm-hmm.
Nyambi.
Yeah, so thank you again, Candace, for those details. I mean, I know it's pretty harrowing. Does it seem like the jury is reacting at all to those details, or is everyone trying to maintain a poker face? Because I think that's a pretty harrowing set of allegations there.
No, absolutely. So listen, I've been in and out of the courthouse. At one point, it's reported that one of the jurors, when they saw these pictures that she had, gasped and put their hand up against their chest, because they were very, very surprised at the bruises that were shown that she took of herself. But most of the time, they have just had a poker face. And I think that they've just been taking everything in, as Sean Combs is too. I think what's also interesting is that while Sean Combs probably will not take the witness stand, just him sitting there all gray, reading the Bible, taking notes, saying thank you to everybody with his hands clasped. You really are testifying when you're not, when you're sitting there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the jury is just taking all of that in, and they're trying to be as poker faced as possible.
Andrew?
Yes, thank you for your reporting on this. What's the overall, temperament in the courtroom in general? Are things pretty contentious? Is everyone pretty civil? What are things like?
Oh, everybody is very civil. If you want to judge on any case, this is the judge to have. He is very civil. All the attorneys are very civil, and I mean, they're powerhouses of attorneys, so they're interesting to watch them do their work. It is packed. It's not as packed. I covered the Sean Combs shooting trial in 2001. It wasn't like that. It's certainly more kind of an assembly line of people who were sitting in there. I think what was interesting is that when we all sit down in court, the manager of the courtroom says, hey, listen, you cannot talk and you have to be respectful, because this is a part where the press has a responsibility to the public in order to report everything that's going on. I like that very much, because this is why we have the press and people like me who are able to go into the courtroom. But it is very civil and very quiet. Outside, it's a madhouse. I mean, people are in line right now in order to be inside of the courthouse tomorrow. There have been fights that have been breaking out, and there's a lot going on. But inside, very, very cordial.
Well, again, it is a whole lot to take in. And again, the trial is expected to go 8 weeks. This is only day 2. So the question then really becomes, what does the prosecution unveil? Again, I saw that attorneys for a couple of other witnesses, including one person who was a Combs assistant, talked about how scared to death and nervous they are testifying.
Oh, absolutely. This is probably, she goes by the name of Mia. This was mentioned in the first day of the opening statements for the prosecution. We heard more about Mia today from Cassie Ventura and how she was treated as his assistant or an employee. And you know what we'll probably hear, he's facing dozens of civil lawsuits. And of course, there was due diligence done to talk to all those people who filed. We'll probably hear from those people who filed those civil lawsuits. But absolutely, we're going to hear from 2 or 3 other women, depending upon if they can get that one who's kind of missing in action. We're going to hear their firsthand testimony as victims in this trial.
All right. Candace Kelley, we appreciate it. Thanks for the breakdown.
All right. Good to see you.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.